The Doomsday Clock, a symbol for catastrophe, a misfortune grim reaper, and an atomic reminder for our demise. But what is the Doomsday Clock? What brought it into existence? What does the timeline imply? And how much time do we have left? The year is 1938. Nuclear fission had just been discovered at the brink of the Second World War, and the superpowers of the world knew exactly how valuable nuclear weapons were during a time of global tension. At the time, American President Franklin D. Roosevelt expressed interest in harnessing uranium to produce energy and bombs as leverage, which led to the famous letter physicist Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard wrote to the president in August of 1939, just 1 month before the September campaign was underway, marking the start of World War II. In the letter, Einstein stated that some recent work by Fermi and Szilard leads me to expect that the element uranium may be turned into a new and important source of energy in the immediate future, and that it may become possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in large mass of uranium by which vast amounts of power and large quantities of new radium-like elements would be generated. A single bomb of this type, carried by a boat and exploded in a port, might very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory. Einstein detailed the benefits and dangers of nuclear power, the possibility of German possession of such a weapon, and warned of its destructive potential. In October 1939, economist Alex Sachs presented this letter to President Roosevelt, in which the president responded with, "Alex, what you are after is to see that the Nazis don't blow us up," and proceeded to create and fund the Uranium Committee, which further led research on uranium and nuclear-related testings. Fast forward to December 7th, 1941. Japan had led a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, killing over 2,000 military personnel. Congress immediately declared war against Japan afterwards, and this event was described by President Roosevelt as a date which will live in infamy. This attack would aggravate the United States and accelerate the need for nuclear weapons. Roosevelt would soon establish the Manhattan Engineer District and approved $500 million for the eventual start of the Manhattan Project in 1942. As the war progressed, so did their work on the atomic bombs. At the time, only the scientists fully realized what they were creating, a bomb capable of mass destruction and eventual global annihilation. But as the crew worked on the project, it slowly became more and more apparent to everyone what the bomb that they were creating would really cause. Unfortunately, President Roosevelt passed away unexpectedly in April 1942, and was succeeded by Vice President Harry Truman, who learned and approved of the project. In June of 1945, prominent physicists, including Szilard himself from the Manhattan Project, came together in secret to sign a cautionary document, the Frank Report. This document suggested that instead of dropping the nuclear bomb in Japan, they should publicly broadcast the power of the bomb, then threaten Japan to surrender without hurting anyone. This document also correctly predicted a nuclear arm race and the concept of mutual assured destruction. Unfortunately, this document failed to progress. So, Szilard took it upon himself to create a petition that was signed by over 70 members who had worked on the Manhattan Project. It asked of President Truman to first negotiate with Japan on terms of surrender before dropping the nuclear bombs. This was a last-ditch effort to avoid nuclear destruction and the death of thousands. Sadly, this petition never reached President Truman, and on the 6th and 9th of August, 2 nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing hundreds of thousands, and marked the end of World War II. One of the greatest blunders in history. Following their failure to prevent the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the scientists who have worked in the Manhattan Project came together and created the nonprofit Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, with the goal to equip the public, policymakers, and scientists with the information needed to reduce man-made threats to our existence. And with them, a clock, but not just any clock. In 1947, they created the Doomsday Clock, a simple quarter of a clock set 7 minutes away from midnight. This timer is representative of the state of humanity. with reaching midnight being the equivalent of reaching a global catastrophe. Whether that would be nuclear, environmental, or anything as equally destructive to our existence. If in a given year, world events are particularly worrying, then the clock ticks closer to midnight. If the world is making an effort to alleviate global issues, the clock ticks backwards, allowing for more time. The point of the clock is not to incite fear among the public, but serves as a reminder of the issues we face as human beings, and to encourage us to all work together in order to resolve one common issue that haunts us all. Since the introduction of the Doomsday Clock, the clock has moved 24 times, 16 times forward and 8 times back. Here are some notable events that caused the clock to move in the past century. 1947, the time is 11:53. The initial setting of the Doomsday Clock, 7 minutes until midnight. 1949, the Soviet Union successfully detonated its first atomic bomb, leading to the nuclear arms race. This moved the clock forward by 4 minutes. 1960, the US and the USSR increased scientific cooperation, even allowing scientists from the two superpowers to interact and communicate. The clock moves backwards by 5 minutes. 1963, the US and the USSR signed a treaty to ban nuclear testing underwater, in the atmosphere, and in outer space. The clock moves backwards by 5 minutes once again. 1968, the Vietnam War intensifies as well as the Indo-Pakistan War. China and France have also acquired and tested nuclear weapons, which moved the clock 5 minutes forward. 1969. Almost every single nation in the world signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, stopping the spread of nuclear weapons. This moved the clock backwards. 1972. The United States and the USSR signed an arm-limiting treaty as well as an anti-ballistic missile treaty. 1981. Tension between the US and USSR reaches an uncomfortably high point, both nations arguing that the only way to end the Cold War was to win it. 1990. The European Iron Curtain and the Berlin Wall has fallen, and Germany was reunified, signaling the near end of the Cold War. 1991. The global superpower USSR had dissolved, turning the clock back by 7 minutes. This is the furthest the clock has ever been from midnight since the creation of the clock. 1998. India and Pakistan both test out more nuclear weapons to show aggression. 2002. The US rejects a series of arm control treaties and announces intention to withdraw from the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty due to fear of nuclear terrorist attacks. 2007. North Korea tests out nuclear weapons with the presence of possibly 26,000 nuclear weapons in the United States and Russia alone. This year, global warming was also added of one of the greatest threats to mankind. 2010. The United Nations Climate Change Conference agreed to take responsibility for carbon emission to limit global temperature rise. This is the first time the clock has moved backwards since the dissipation of the Soviet Union in 1991. 2012. The lack of attention given to global climate change, nuclear weapons being stockpiled, and the potential for regional nuclear conflict all contributed minorly to the progression of the clock. 2015. The lack of attention given to the climate change persists, followed by modernization of nuclear weapons in the US and Russia, with the unsolved issue of nuclear waste. 2017. US President Donald Trump expresses disbelief in scientific consensus over climate change, moving the clock 30 seconds forward. This is the first usage of fractions. 2018. The US withdrew from the Paris Agreement. Abandonment towards decarbonization and withdrawal from other treaties moved the clock forward 30 more seconds, matching the closest the clock has been to midnight since 1953. 2020. The increased tension between US and Iran, neglect of climate change, and the end of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, originally signed in 1988, all caused the clock to move forward by 20 more seconds. This is the closest we have ever come to midnight. We are now 100 seconds to midnight. According to the bulletin, this is the most dangerous situation humanity has ever faced. Now, fast forward to today. 75 years later, the clock has not turned yet. But judging from recent events, it is safe to say that the clock will be moving forward. We have to stand together. We must be strong and work as one. One more time. Otherwise, the atomic reminder of our global existence may just tick one last time. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and please consider subscribing. A special shout out to all my Patreon supporters who helped make this video possible: Alex von Sternberg, Ollie, Rightune, and Galactic. I hope you have a good day.